Sometimes revenge is a dish best served on a pristine plate with a side of irony. My sister never thought I'd be the one holding the ladle in the end. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more juicy family drama stories just like this one. Charlotte, this is inedible. I don't understand how you can mess up a simple pasta dish. My sister Vanessa rolled her eyes as she pushed away her plate, barely touched. The family dinner I'd spent hours preparing sat awkwardly on the table as my parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. "It's not that bad," my father offered weakly, taking another bite with visible effort. "Not that bad? Dad, you're just being nice. This sauce tastes like ketchup mixed with water." Vanessa had always been brutally honest, but tonight her words cut deeper than usual. At 32, I should have been used to my younger sister's criticism. She'd been picking apart my cooking since we were kids. But tonight was different. I had invited my family over to my new apartment to celebrate my promotion at the marketing firm. The pasta was supposed to be special, a recipe I'd been perfecting for weeks. "Well, we can't all be culinary geniuses like you, Vanessa," I replied, trying to keep my voice light, despite the burning humiliation crawling up my neck. Vanessa flipped her perfectly styled hair over her shoulder. "It's not about being a genius. It's about following basic instructions. Even a child could do better." My mother placed her hand over mine. "The garlic bread is delicious, honey." But the damage was done. I excused myself to the kitchen, pretending to check on dessert while blinking back tears. I stood there, staring at the tiramisu I'd made, probably also inedible by Vanessa's standards, and something inside me snapped. I'd always been the responsible one. While Vanessa hopped between jobs and apartments, I'd built a stable career in marketing. I paid my bills on time, maintained a savings account, and never asked our parents for money. Yet, somehow, Vanessa always managed to make me feel inadequate. When I returned to the table with dessert, my sister was entertaining our parents with stories from her latest bartending gig at an upscale lounge downtown. "The chef there is incredible," she gushed. "He does this deconstructed tiramisu that's to die for." She glanced at my traditional version with barely concealed disdain. Later that night, after everyone had left, I scrubbed dishes with more force than necessary, replaying Vanessa's comments in my head. I'd always loved cooking, even if I wasn't professionally trained. It was my escape, my creative outlet after long days of spreadsheets and client calls. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend, Olivia. "How was family dinner?" she asked. "Don't ask," I replied. Vanessa strikes again. "The cooking critic? What did she say this time?" I gave her the highlights, ending with, "Sometimes I think I should just give up cooking altogether." Olivia's response came quickly. "Or maybe you should take some classes and show her up." That message stopped me in my tracks. Cooking classes. Why hadn't I thought of that before? The next morning, fueled by determination and spite, I researched culinary programs in the city. Most were expensive full-time commitments, impossible with my job. But then I found it. Weekend workshops at the Culinary Corner, taught by Chef Marcus Reed, a semi-finalist on a popular cooking competition show. I signed up immediately, draining a chunk of my savings account. The first class was that Saturday, and as I walked into the industrial kitchen with 11 other students, I felt both terrified and exhilarated. Chef Marcus was nothing like I expected. In his mid-40s with salt and pepper hair and forearms covered in burn scars, he wasn't the polished TV personality I remembered. He was better. Direct, passionate, and surprisingly patient. "Cooking isn't about perfection," he told us during that first class. "It's about love and instinct. Technique can be taught, but passion comes from within." Over the next few months, I devoted every weekend to those classes. I learned how to properly hold a knife, the importance of mise en place, how to develop layers of flavor, and when to trust my instincts over recipes. My tiny apartment kitchen became my laboratory during weeknights. I practiced chopping techniques until my hands cramped. I made the same sauces repeatedly until they were perfect. I filled my freezer with experiments and fed my coworkers daily. "You should sell these," my colleague Tom said one day after devouring a slice of my lemon tart. I laughed it off, but the seed was planted. 6 months into my culinary education, Chef Marcus pulled me aside after class. "Charlotte, you've got something special," he said. "Most people take years to develop the palate you've shown in months." Coming from him, those words felt like winning the lottery. "I'm looking for an assistant for my private catering events," he continued. "The pay isn't great, but the experience would be invaluable. Interested?" Was I interested? It would mean working evenings and weekends on top of my full-time job. It would mean exhaustion and no social life. It would mean stepping completely out of my comfort zone. "Absolutely," I said without hesitation. That night, I called my parents to share the news, unable to contain my excitement. "That's wonderful, honey," my mom said. "You've always loved cooking." "Is this about what Vanessa said?" my dad asked, cutting to the heart of the matter as he often did. "No," I lied. "This is about me doing something I love." But of course, it had started because of Vanessa. Her mockery had been the push I needed to take myself seriously. Now, I was determined to become so good that even she couldn't find fault. What I didn't expect was how quickly cooking would transform from an act of revenge to a genuine passion. Working alongside Chef Marcus, I discovered a world where creativity met precision, where science met art. I helped cater weddings, corporate events, and intimate dinner parties. I learned to stay calm when things went wrong, to improvise when necessary, and to present food that was as beautiful as it was delicious. My marketing job became the thing I endured to fund my real passion. As I approached the 1-year anniversary of that disastrous family dinner, I realized something had fundamentally changed. I wasn't cooking to prove Vanessa wrong anymore. I was cooking because it made me feel alive. On a chilly autumn evening, I was helping Chef Marcus prepare for a retirement party when he asked, "Have you ever thought about opening your own place?" I nearly dropped the tray of canapes I was arranging. "My own restaurant? That's crazy." "Is it?" He raised an eyebrow. "You've got talent, Charlotte, and you work harder than anyone I've ever met." "I don't have the experience," I protested, "or the money." "Experience comes with doing," he said, tasting a sauce and adding a pinch of salt. "And there are ways to start small." That conversation haunted me for weeks. Start small. What did that mean? A food truck? A catering company? A tiny cafe? The answer came unexpectedly during a weekend visit to my hometown, about an hour outside the city. I was having coffee with my high school friend Rachel when she mentioned that Mabel's, a beloved local diner, was closing after 40 years. "Mabel's kids don't want to take it over," Rachel explained. "It's a shame. That place is an institution." My heart started racing. I'd spent countless afternoons at Mabel's during high school, nursing a single cup of coffee while studying. It was small, just 10 tables and a counter, but always packed with locals. "When is it closing?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "End of the month. Mabel's already started selling equipment." I drove by the diner after coffee with Rachel. The closing sale sign in the window felt like both an ending and a beginning. Before I could talk myself out of it, I parked and went inside. Mabel recognized me immediately. "Charlotte Bennett, how long has it been?" We caught up over pie. Still the best apple pie I'd ever tasted, and I found myself asking about her plans for the space. "Selling the building," she sighed. "Though it breaks my heart. This place deserves to stay a restaurant." "What if—" I hesitated, the idea crystallizing as I spoke. "What if someone wanted to open a new restaurant here?" 2 weeks later, I sat across from my bank manager, presenting a business plan I'd worked on night and day. Chef Marcus had connected me with a restaurant consultant who'd helped refine my concept and numbers. I was requesting a loan, using my 401k as collateral and the money I'd inherited from my grandmother as a down payment. "It's risky," the bank manager warned. "Most restaurants fail within the first year." "I know the statistics," I said confidently, though my hands trembled beneath the table. "But I also know this town, and it needs what I'm offering." My concept was simple: locally sourced comfort food with a modern twist, served in a warm, inviting space. I'd keep some of Mabel's classics as a tribute, but bring my own vision to the menu. When the loan was approved, I gave notice at my marketing job. My boss thought I was having a breakdown. "You're giving up a career with growth potential to cook in a small town?" he asked incredulously. Maybe I was crazy. But as I signed the lease on Mabel's old space and began renovations, I felt more certain than ever that this was right. I named the restaurant Homecoming. The renovations took longer than expected and cost more than budgeted, as these things always do. I painted walls myself, refinished the original counter, and haunted thrift stores for the perfect mismatched vintage plates and cups. Chef Marcus introduced me to suppliers and helped me design a menu that was ambitious but manageable for a small kitchen. I hired a sous chef who had worked at a respected farm-to-table restaurant in the city, and 3 local high school students as servers and dishwashers. The night before our soft opening, I stood in the empty restaurant, taking it all in. The warm yellow walls, the repurposed wood tables, the open kitchen where customers could watch their food being prepared. It was everything I had envisioned. I'd invited my parents to the friends and family night, but deliberately hadn't mentioned it to Vanessa. I wasn't ready for her criticism, not when everything was so new and vulnerable. But my mother, ever the peacemaker, brought her anyway. "Surprise," Mom said when they arrived. "Vanessa was in town visiting, so I thought she should see your new place." My sister looked around with undisguised curiosity. She'd been working at a trendy cocktail bar in Chicago for the past 6 months, her longest job yet, and had developed an even more sophisticated palate and opinion. "It's cute," she said, in a tone that suggested she meant the opposite. "Very small town." "That's the idea," I replied, leading them to a table. "We're celebrating local flavors and traditions." The evening started well enough. My parents gushed over the space and the menu. Other guests, mostly friends, former colleagues, and local business owners, seemed genuinely impressed. Then the food started coming out. My signature dish was a reinvented pot pie made with locally raised chicken, heirloom vegetables, and a crust infused with herbs from my own garden. I'd spent months perfecting it, and it was the heart of my menu. I watched anxiously as the server placed it before Vanessa. She cut into the crust, releasing a cloud of fragrant steam, and took a careful bite. The silence as she chewed seemed endless. "Well?" my mother finally prompted. Vanessa placed her fork down deliberately. "It's interesting." My heart sank. "Interesting how?" "The crust is too thick, and there's something overpowering the flavor." "Time? You've used too much." My parents looked mortified. The table next to us had gone quiet, clearly overhearing. "I'm just being honest," Vanessa added, reaching for her water. "Isn't that what you want? Honest feedback?" Something in me snapped for the second time. But instead of retreating to the kitchen in tears, I stood taller. "Actually, Vanessa, what I wanted was for my sister to be supportive on one of the most important nights of my life. But I see that was too much to ask." I walked away before she could respond, returning to the kitchen where I belonged, among the chaos and heat and beautiful food being created. My sous chef, Luis, gave me a questioning look. "Family," I explained, and he nodded in perfect understanding. The rest of the evening was a blur of cooking, greeting guests, and accepting genuine compliments. When it was over, my staff and I collapsed in exhaustion, but I felt a sense of accomplishment, unlike anything I'd experienced before. My parents came to the kitchen to say goodbye. Vanessa wasn't with them. She took an Uber back to our place. My dad explained awkwardly. "Charlotte, the food was wonderful," my mom insisted. "Vanessa just, you know how she is." I did know. And for the first time, I realized her criticism said more about her than about me. "It's okay," I said, surprised to find I meant it. I didn't open this restaurant for Vanessa. I opened it for me. Homecoming's official opening was the following week. We started with dinner service only, Wednesday through Sunday. The first month was a roller coaster, nights when every table was full and the kitchen moved in perfect harmony, followed by evenings when nothing went right, and I questioned every decision I'd ever made. Word spread quickly in our small town. The local paper ran a glowing review, praising our sophisticated take on hometown favorites. Weekends became consistently booked, and we started taking reservations 2 weeks in advance. But running a restaurant was harder than I'd imagined. Food costs ate into our narrow profit margins. Equipment broke at the worst possible moments. Staff called in sick, leaving us scrambling. And I worked longer hours than I ever had at my marketing job, often arriving at 7 a.m. to accept deliveries and leaving after midnight once everything was prepped for the next day. Despite the challenges, I loved it. I loved the adrenaline rush of a busy service, the satisfaction of a perfectly executed dish, and most of all, the joy on customers' faces when they tasted something I'd created. 3 months after opening, I received a phone call that would change everything. Charlotte Bennett? The voice on the other end was unfamiliar. Yes, that's me. This is James Wallace from Food and Wine. I'm calling because we're doing a feature on small-town restaurants that are redefining regional cuisine, and your name came up. I nearly dropped the phone. Food and Wine was one of the most respected culinary magazines in the country. A feature could put homecoming on the map nationally. The article came out 2 months later, with a beautiful photo of my pot pie and a quote calling me a self-taught talent transforming comfort food with classical technique and local ingenuity. Reservations exploded overnight. We started getting calls from people in neighboring states willing to drive hours for dinner. We extended our hours and hired more staff to keep up with demand. Then came the call from Vanessa. "So," she said when I answered, "Food and Wine, huh? Pretty impressive." It was the first time we'd spoken since the disastrous soft opening. Our parents had visited several times, always without her. "Thanks," I replied cautiously. "Look, I'm in a bit of a situation," she continued. "The bar in Chicago closed suddenly. Something about the owner and tax evasion. I'm kind of between opportunities." I waited, already sensing where this was going. "Mom mentioned you're expanding your hours. Do you need any help? I have bartending experience, and I know how restaurants work." The irony wasn't lost on me. My sister, who had mocked my cooking, was now asking for a job at my successful restaurant. The petty part of me wanted to savor the moment, to reject her the way she had rejected my food. But I thought about what Chef Marcus had taught me about leadership in the kitchen. "A good chef turns mistakes into opportunities," he always said, both for the food and the people making it. "We do need someone," I said finally, "but the only open position is for a dishwasher." The silence on the other end was deafening. "A dishwasher," she repeated flatly. "Yes, 3 nights a week to start. Minimum wage plus tips split with the kitchen staff." Another long pause. "When can I start?" she asked, her voice tight. And that's how my sister, the culinary critic, became the dishwasher at my restaurant. Vanessa's first night was a Friday, our busiest service. I introduced her to the staff, showed her the industrial dishwasher, and left her with Ramon, our head dishwasher, for training. "Your sister's working here now?" Luis asked incredulously when we were alone in the prep kitchen. "Everyone deserves a second chance," I said, focusing on the dough I was rolling out. "Even the sister who said your pot pie crust was too thick?" He raised an eyebrow. We'd turned that critique into a running joke in the kitchen. "Especially her." I smiled. "Besides, have you seen the dish pit on a Friday night? Consider it culinary education." The dinner service that night was particularly chaotic. A large party arrived without a reservation, a server called in sick, and one of the burners on the stove started acting up. I was expediting orders when I glanced over at the dish pit. Vanessa was working furiously, hair pulled back in a messy bun, face flushed from the steam, designer clothes hidden beneath a stained apron. She didn't look up once, just kept moving with grim determination. When service finally ended at 11 p.m., most of the staff gathered at the bar for our traditional post-shift drink. Vanessa emerged from the kitchen, looking exhausted. "Beer?" I offered, holding out a cold bottle. She accepted it wordlessly, collapsing onto a bar stool. "So," I said after she'd taken a long drink, "what did you think?" "I think my back is broken, my hands are pruny, and I smell like garbage." She took another swig of beer. but the food looked amazing going out. And coming back with empty plates. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was something. Same shift tomorrow, I reminded her. We open at 5. She nodded, finishing her beer. I'll be here. To my surprise, she was. Not only that, but she arrived 15 minutes early, already wearing clothes appropriate for the dish pit. Over the next few weeks, Vanessa proved herself to be a reliable, if not enthusiastic, dishwasher. She never complained, at least not to me, and she started picking up extra shifts when others couldn't work. One night, I found her studying the prep list I'd left for Luis. Curious about something? I asked. She jumped, looking embarrassed. Just trying to understand the flow. Why you prep certain things in a certain order. It's about efficiency, I explained, and making sure everything's at its peak when it hits the plate. To my surprise, she asked follow-up questions that showed genuine interest. It was the first conversation about food we'd had that didn't include her criticizing my techniques. A month into Vanessa's employment, Ramon didn't show up for his shift. No call, no text, nothing. We later learned he'd decided to move back to Mexico to help with his family's business. Looks like you need a head dishwasher, Vanessa said when I shared the news with the staff. Are you volunteering? I was skeptical. Why not? I know the system now, and I could use the extra hours. So my sister was promoted from dishwasher to head dishwasher, with a small raise and responsibility for keeping the dish pit organized and staffed. What happened next surprised everyone, especially me. Vanessa transformed the dish pit. She reorganized the workflow, implemented a new system for sorting dirty dishes, and even found a more efficient way to store clean ones. Our bussers and servers noticed the difference immediately. Your sister's kind of a genius with systems, Luis commented one day. She figured out we were wasting time sorting silverware after washing. Now the bussers pre-sorted in bins. I watched from a distance as Vanessa found her place in our kitchen hierarchy. She wasn't just washing dishes. She was becoming an integral part of the restaurant's operation. Then came the night that changed our relationship forever. It was a Saturday in December, 6 months after homecoming had opened. We were fully booked, plus a waiting list. I had just finished plating an order when Luis cut his hand badly on a mandolin. I need stitches, he admitted, looking pale as I examined the wound. With my sous chef headed to the ER and a full restaurant waiting for food, I faced a crisis. The line cook could handle the grill and fryer, but she wasn't ready to take over Luis's station. I can help, Vanessa said, appearing beside me. She'd already removed her dishwashing apron. You? I couldn't hide my disbelief. I've been watching. And I used to date a line cook, remember? I picked up some things. I hesitated. Putting my sister on the line during our busiest service was a huge risk. But what choice did I have? Garde manger station, I decided. Cold appetizers and salads only. Follow the recipes exactly. If you have questions, ask me before you plate anything. Vanessa nodded solemnly and took her position at the cold station. To my astonishment, she performed admirably. Her plating wasn't as precise as Luis's, but her timing was good, and she followed directions without argument. By the end of service, we had made it through without any major disasters. Not bad for a dishwasher, I said as we sat at the bar afterward, both too wired to go home despite our exhaustion. She smiled, a genuine smile without her usual edge. Not bad for a marketing executive turned chef owner. We clinked our beer bottles in a silent truce. The truce turned into something more as winter melted into spring. Vanessa continued washing dishes, but I started training her on prep work during slow afternoons. She showed a natural aptitude for knife skills and an unexpected attention to detail. Why didn't you ever pursue cooking? I asked one day as we prepped vegetables side by side. You're good at it. She was quiet for so long I thought she might not answer. Because it was your thing, she finally said, not looking up from the carrots she was julienning. Growing up, you were always cooking with Mom and Grandma. I figured I needed my own thing. So you became a critic instead of a creator? I couldn't keep the edge out of my voice. She shrugged. It was easier to point out what was wrong than to risk making something that wasn't perfect. The honesty of her answer caught me off guard. For the first time, I saw beyond my sister's bravado to the insecurity beneath. "Nothing in a kitchen is perfect," I said more gently. "That's what makes it interesting." Over the next few months, Vanessa gradually transitioned from the dish pit to the kitchen. She started on the cold line permanently, mastering our salads and appetizers before moving to more complex stations. What she lacked in formal training, she made up for in precision and work ethic. Our relationship evolved, too. The competitive tension that had defined us since childhood began to dissolve as we worked side by side. We still disagreed, often loudly, about techniques and flavors, but the disagreements became productive rather than personal. A year after Homecoming opened, I received a call from a producer at a popular cooking competition show, the same one Chef Marcus had competed on years earlier. "We're doing a special episode featuring self-taught chefs," the producer explained. "Your name came up. Would you be interested in competing?" The opportunity was incredible. National exposure for the restaurant, a chance to test my skills against other chefs, and a substantial cash prize if I won. But it would mean leaving Homecoming for a week during filming. "I can't leave the restaurant for that long," I told the producer. "We're too small." "What about your sister?" my mother suggested when I called her that night. "Vanessa knows the menu now. She could run things while you're gone." The idea was both terrifying and perfect. Vanessa had proven herself in the kitchen, but taking full responsibility for the restaurant was a much bigger step. "Do you think she's ready?" I asked. "Do you?" Mom countered. I thought about how far Vanessa had come, from criticizing my pasta to executing complex dishes with confidence. I thought about her reorganization of the dish pit, her attention to detail, and her growing creativity with specials. The next day, I approached her after prep. "I've been invited to compete on Culinary Showdown," I said, trying to sound casual. Her eyes widened. "That's amazing. When do you go?" "That's the thing. I'd need someone to run the kitchen while I'm gone. Someone who knows our menu inside and out." Understanding dawned on her face. "Me? Only if you're interested. It's a lot of responsibility." "Are you kidding? Of course I'm interested." Her excitement was palpable. Then she hesitated. "But do you trust me with your restaurant?" The question hung between us, weighted with our complicated history. "I do," I said, realizing I meant it. "You've earned it." The week I spent in Los Angeles filming the show was one of the most stressful and exhilarating of my life. I advanced through several rounds, cooking dishes inspired by Homecoming's menu, but elevated for the competition. I didn't win the final round, but I placed second, an achievement that left me glowing with pride. When I returned to the restaurant, exhausted but happy, I found it not just surviving but thriving. Vanessa had maintained our standards while adding her own touch to the daily specials. "We had a record weekend," she reported during our staff meeting. "And 3 food bloggers came in specifically because they saw you on the show." "Any disasters?" I asked. She grinned. "Nothing we couldn't handle." In the months that followed, Homecoming's reputation continued to grow. We expanded to lunch service and hired more staff to keep up with demand. The local brewery approached us about a collaboration dinner. A regional cooking magazine asked me to contribute recipes for their spring issue. Through it all, Vanessa remained my right hand. She officially became our sous chef, taking over more responsibilities as the business expanded. Her palate, once used to criticize, now helped refine our menu. Her organizational skills, honed in the dish pit, improved our kitchen's efficiency. One evening, after a particularly successful service featuring a new menu we'd developed together, we sat at the bar sharing a bottle of wine. "Do you remember that family dinner?" I asked. "The one where you said my pasta sauce tasted like ketchup and water." She winced. "Not my finest moment." I was so angry and hurt. "I signed up for cooking classes the next day, just to prove you wrong." She looked surprised. "Seriously? That dinner was why you started taking classes?" I nodded. Spite is a powerful motivator. And now look at us. She gestured around the restaurant. All because I was a terrible sister. You weren't terrible, I corrected. Just honest in the worst possible way. We both laughed, the sound echoing in the empty restaurant. For what it's worth, she said, refilling our glasses. I'm sorry. I was jealous of you, your steady job, your apartment, your whole put-together life. Criticizing your cooking was my way of feeling superior at something. And now you're washing dishes at my restaurant, I teased. Sous chef, she corrected with mock indignation. Though I still jump in the dish pit when we're slammed. I raised my glass. To spite, second chances, and sisters who sometimes know what they're talking about, even when they're being jerks. She clinked her glass against mine. And to sisters who are stubborn enough to prove everyone wrong. As we sat there, surrounded by the restaurant we now ran together, I realized how far we'd both come. Vanessa had found her place in the kitchen, not as a critic, but as a creator. And I had built something I never would have attempted without her harsh words pushing me forward. Sometimes the people who challenge us most are the ones who help us grow. And sometimes, revenge turns into something much sweeter. Success that can be shared. The next weekend, we hosted another family dinner. This time in our restaurant, with our parents seated at the best table, enjoying dishes we had created together. The pasta sauce was perfect,